Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to class today. Thank you for joining me. Whether you're watching live or you're watching the recording, I appreciate you taking the time to watch. Welcome to our first social media live stream for the semester. For today, I've got a couple little primary focuses, right? Today we are starting Module 1, which is a module about social media history, and it's just kind of getting us, some groundwork laid for kind of understanding how we got to where we are. Right? I think in any context, having a little bit of understanding of history is pretty important, right? Especially in something like this where theory and practice has kind of been built up over time, right? We kind of look at social media differently today than we would have 20 years ago, and even 10 years ago for that matter, if we're being honest. But we can take the idea of social media and community, I think, is a better maybe even a better term that we can use here in social media. And we can expand that over hundreds of years, right? Like what we know today as social media is, relatively young, relatively new, right? It only has about, maybe 18 years or so of existence at this point. Maybe 20 something if we want to get really generous with it, or even still, if we want to get even, I guess if we count things like Usenet and things like that, we can push that back even further, to a degree of like 30, 35 years with a social media type of history. But we can take the idea of community and we can push it back even farther, and we can see communities using different media tools to connect with one another, to create good groups, to work with things and work with one another. Basically as far back as we can go, honestly. So, that's kind of the point behind Module 1. We'll talk more about that in just a little bit. Before we get into that, what I want to talk about today is I said I'd talk more about the final project. And I know I've discussed the final project with some of you previously. I know I've talked to some people in the past, and we've worked out, what we do for the final project in this class on an individual level with some of you. And so that's good, right? All of that still applies. I still remember everything that I've talked to people about in the past there. So no big deal as far as all that goes. But let's just take a few minutes here and let's talk final project. If we look on the sidebar here, there are really three things that have to do with our final project, right? We have our social media project information here, which gives you all of the information. We have our social media, or our final project submission link here, which is where you'll submit your final folders, and really you'll do a midterm report as well here. So I guess there's four things here that relate to your final project. So you have a metrics report at the midterm. It's just sort of here's what I've been doing so far. Here's how things have been going, sort of check in. And then your final project submission at the end, where you have the big documentation and everything that you're turning in. But the other thing that we would have here that I've set up is this YouTube 101 module. And that's where I have a series of videos that are just kind of showing you different things that you can do, little techniques, little how-tos, if you will. And if you're familiar with different ways to do things, I'm not saying you have to do things this way. This is just a module basically for people who don't really have any experience with this kind of stuff, and they're having questions about, what should I do, or how should I do this? How do you create a YouTube channel? That sort of thing. And so we'll go in depth on all of this right here at the start, just so we all have a decent understanding about our final project. So when we look at our social media project information here, right, which is this link here at the bottom, that's our final project information. And so this basically gives you sort of the rundown of everything. And there are a lot of words here. And I went over it, kind of on a surface level in our orientation video. And I just want to, again, I just want to kind of go in a little more depth here. Right, one of the things that I think really helps people out in terms of learning how to do stuff like this is getting in it. Right, and previously, several years ago when I was kind of first getting started teaching this class, we had a very different project that we did. Right, and it was more or less geared toward just kind of making sure you could use social media, and it was, in my opinion, it wasn't that great. Right, because, when we think about what somebody who is entering a career field, which, is the ideal behind why you all would, come to a community college to get a degree. You're trying to enter a career field where you might be working in this sort of stuff. When it comes to the idea of what you'll be doing in a career field, we need to go kind of far beyond just how do I create a Facebook post, right? And we need to talk about the whys and the whens and the who's and the what's, all the other things that get involved with social media. Basically doing some base level, sort of introductory level social media marketing, working with social media to build community, which at the end of the day is really kind of the goal of a lot of these businesses and even individuals. We'll talk more about that as we kind of progress through the course. Of how we use social media, right? Like we create a community around this social property where we are, kind of sharing information back and forth with one another. And we're able to get a message out about a certain thing and get people talking about it and get people interested in it because we've built that sort of community. So I wanted to do something bigger than just kind of, here's how, make a few posts on Facebook, make a few posts on this. Just show me that you can do it, because that's not really helping anybody. So I wanted to kind of create a product that we could do some social media around. And, we could do something fake, but we could also use a social media property to build a product ourselves. Right? And that's kind of what we're doing here with YouTube and or Twitch. Right, so when we look at YouTube is in and of itself a social media property, right? It's a social media website. So is Twitch, right? They allow you to create community, leave comments, interact with one another. But they're also platforms where people are creating content, where people are trying to get things out there, where people are trying to earn and create businesses, which is sort of secondary to what we're doing, but it is a potential thing that we have there. So I wanted us to create a product that we could relate to, which would be our own social media channels on either YouTube or Twitch, and then use other platforms, things like Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, whatever else you got going on, to sort of try to get people to watch your videos. Make posts that will send kind of people back to your Twitch channel or your YouTube channel to increase engagement. And so that's going to be something that we're going to be working on over the entire semester, right? We're starting it here in Module 1, and it's something that we're continuing throughout. And so I'm not necessarily going to expect you to, have 100,000 YouTube subscribers by the end of the semester. That's unrealistic. But, basically what we want to see is that you kind of have this plan and you understand how social media works, and you can work with consistency and work with these other channels to kind of funnel things back, right, in order to try to build this community surrounding all of that. So if you use YouTube, the videos can be a little bit shorter, right? Sometimes when we're using a pre-recorded platform, like our YouTube pre-recording, and you could do YouTube streams. If you do YouTube streams, I'd recommend that you follow the Twitch stream requirements, just because our streams are kind of flowing, right? Like I'm just doing this live right now. I'm not editing it. I'm not doing anything like that. So I can kind of go a little bit longer with less effort and kind of put an equal amount of effort in. Right? When I think about a pre-recorded video, I'm thinking about, like a video process that's a little more polished. Maybe you tried to do a little bit of editing on it, or maybe you just had to make multiple takes to try to get the right thing going. Right? So it might have taken you a little bit longer. You also want to make a thumbnail. You have to figure out a good title and all that kind of stuff, which, isn't necessarily in, something that you have to worry about a ton for a stream. Right? So that's why I kind of have the times the way that I have them here. Because, with a pre-recorded video, you're doing more on the back end before you upload it and put it in place. So there is that. If you already have a YouTube channel or a Twitch channel that you're streaming on actively, you can use that, right? I don't need you to create a new one. If you've got one that you're already using and doing things on, you're welcome to use that as your channel. It does, as it says here in the next paragraph, it needs to be supported by other social media accounts. If you look at the field, if you look at the metrics reporting sheet, you'll see places for 2 different social accounts. So, the minimum requirement here is 2 other accounts. So there's 3 things here that you have: your video and the other accounts that you're posting from. So I do have minimum posting requirements, right? And that's, 1 a week, basically. That's the bare minimum, right? 1 on your primary and then 1 on each of your secondary. That is the bare minimum of what I'd like to see happen per week for this final project. You record all of that in your posting requirement log, which has been updated since the last time we looked at it. In that orientation sheet, I went back and changed the dates. Right, like I said I would. Or I did. I don't know, maybe I didn't upload the right one. I'll have to go back and fix that. Because I definitely did that. Let me find that document. Because I did it. And that annoys me. We'll do this live. Where did it go? You know what? It's fine. We'll just do the thing here. Because I just want to add a year to these. So there. We'll do that. And we'll just do this live here. We'll replace this file live. Because because it needs to be replaced. And I did it. It must not have taken. There we go. New file in place. So it's got 2020. It's got 2023 dates on it. It's just one a week, right? That's all we're shooting for anyway. The exact dates don't really matter as long as it's one a week. So the dates on there are like week of this, week of that. No big deal, right? Just so long as you get one a week. The other big thing that we have due first is your project proposal, where I just want to get the information from you, right? So it's just a little form in here that you can fill out. Fill everything out. Let me know the information of what you're thinking in terms of what you want to do for a channel. And we can work with it from there and do whatever we need to do. Let me open that up just so you all can see it. And we can talk about it just a little bit. So this is a docm file, so it's an interactive form. It basically works in some of the exact same ways. If you see this, it isn't. It's just trying to protect you from somebody trying to take your information, which I'm not. Let's see if we can... see if we can figure out how to enable this. So we can go to File. And I think there's something in here about a trust center, maybe in Options. Trust center, yes. So if you get that issue there, with that, you can change the trust center settings. You can enable it and then go back and disable it, right? So you go into File, Options, Trust Center settings, and we can just enable the macros, and then we can reopen the file. And then once you're done editing it, you can go back and disable them again so nobody tries to take your info. What? I just told you to do it. Options, Trust Center enabled. Huh. If it does this to you like it's doing to me, you can just follow around and just kind of add this on another. Just put the information on another sheet, right? And it'll work fine. All I really, the forum really doesn't matter as long as the questions are answered. I have no idea why it's blocking this. Because I made this forum and it is trustworthy. But it's okay. Alright, you can just type things out here. So just type it in. Type in your responses if it gives you this issue. But it's your name, the channel title, which is what you want to call your channel concept, just the general idea behind the videos that you're going to be making, whether you've chosen YouTube or Twitch, a couple of the supporting sites that you might use, any branding needs that you might need with your channel. If you want a logo or a channel banner or anything like that, let me know. I can help you develop that kind of stuff. When you plan on posting for your channel, and just a general plan of what you're going to do, right? So that's what we're looking for here in this project proposal form. That's due with Module 1, so that'll be due next Thursday. And, I'll give you the thumbs up and go ahead, and you can go ahead and start making your videos. So that's the big thing that comes out of that. That's due right here with our lab project proposal submission. We'll show you the YouTube 101 module really quickly. Talk about that just a little bit more. Well, before we do that, let me not get ahead of myself here. Let me just talk about some more about the videos before we do that. You don't have to be in the video. Your face never needs to make an appearance. Your voice doesn't need to make an appearance. The content of the video doesn't really matter to me very much. Right? What I want to see is more of how you use the social media platforms. The content of the video doesn't really make a whole lot of difference to me. If you don't know how to make a video, you can contact me and I can help you. I also have made this optional module, which is YouTube 101. Right? This walks you through how to create a YouTube channel, how to create a Twitch account, customizing your YouTube channel, so adding your banners and things like that in there, using OBS to record videos, uploading a video, working with music in your videos. So I have something here that shows you how you can kind of add it live to YouTube or Twitch videos like I do before class gets started here. And I have something to show you how to add some music to an already existing YouTube video. And a little video that shows you about where to go to get extra help with either YouTube or Twitch using their own help stuff. And so if you encounter anything else that you think might be good for me to add to this YouTube 101 module, let me know. And I can make something that works here that we can use to help people make videos, right? So anything in terms of helping you make a video and getting it on YouTube or streaming it on Twitch. If there's anything here that you might want to see that's not included, or that you might want to know how to do that's not included, just let me know and we'll make a video for that and we'll plop it in here so everybody can have the benefit of it. So you're just going to make the posts, you're going to keep a record of them. There are also other little parts of the project that we'll be doing along the way as we kind of discuss different things in the modules. So there's milestones that we're completing along the way. So you're not just expected to do everything all at once, right? Which is pretty good. You'll see them as we kind of progress through the different modules. And then at the end of the day, when we get to our final project submission in May, it has everything that you need here. But this looks like a list of a lot of stuff. But by the time we get to the end, since we are using milestones and using different weeks projects and things as a part of this, about 90% of it will already be done. So you'll just have to kind of pull it all together there at the end with an additional little reflection about the process and things that you've done. So it is a pretty big project, and it is something that we'll be working on all semester long. And if you don't get started on it, if you don't get a quick start on it, if it takes you a couple weeks to get going, that's fine, right? You can kind of make it up with extra videos and things like that. So lots of options here. I just want to see you use social media and try to drive it back to something. So we will see, for those who are with us live, if there are any questions about the final project. Anything that I can answer now, or it might just be things that I can, answer later on as we're kind of doing the weekly stuff. It is a lot of stuff, so I like to kind of take some time and just talk about it, right? Because it is a pretty big project, but you're not doing a bunch of stuff at once. And also because of this, right, you're doing kind of less stuff in the modules than you would be otherwise, because more of those module assignments kind of go toward working on your final project. Like this here is final project related, right? Your branding package. And that's your big project for the brand module. All right, it's just understanding your brand. That sort of thing. What do I do about how I get my people to watch the stream? It's a good question. That's kind of, that's part of what we're going to be kind of discussing, right? Is how we would build that community and build that audience. So that's kind of a part of the course. So we'll talk more about that as we kind of progress throughout things. That's kind of what the other social medias are for. We try to seek out our audience. So if we go to, say, Twitter, and we're making a Twitter, and we use that Twitter to engage in conversations and community with other individuals that might, get people interested in what we have to say, and then we use that platform to drive people back to Twitch or wherever, right? That's kind of what helps us with that. But that is right. Yeah, and that's kind of just, as we kind of progress, it's, we can talk more about what we do to get people there watching. It's, it's just one of those things, and it doesn't really matter to me if you, at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter to me if you have anybody watching, just so long as you're doing it, because, sometimes that just kind of takes time to build up, and so, you might not have anybody watching for the duration of the project, and it's fine. It's fine. Cool. So with that, if you think of any questions while you're kind of going and working on the project, feel free to contact me and ask them. And I will do my best to give you a good answer for them. Let's talk a little bit, just really quickly, about the history of social media. Maybe we can get out of here just a little bit early. I don't like to go more than an hour on these. But, we could probably go, 15, 20 minutes for a general overview on the history of social media, and then we can enjoy the rest of our Friday. So a little bit of history of social media here. Let's talk about it. And I do try to kind of put this in a different point of view here. As I start off here, one of the things that I think is kind of key for us to understand is just to kind of define terms, understand what we mean by things. And so when we think about social media in particular, we can use some different definitions to define social media. Right? The Merriam-Webster Dictionary definition of social media is defined as forms of electronic communication through which users create online communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content. Right, so the key word here that kind of brings it into the 21st century is online. Right, we have these other we have in parentheses here where it talks about microblogging and social networking, and we'll talk about what a microblog and all that kind of stuff is as we progress. But this is kind of a definition that's been updated to the 21st century. Right, when we kind of break it down and we take one word out of it, it's something that's been around for a long, long time, right? When we think about forms of electronic communication through which users create communities to share information, ideas, personal messages, and other content, well, that's something that's been around forever, right? Like the very first electronic communication that we had really was the telegraph. Right, and so one of the things that we can kind of think of as a through line in terms of social media from the telegraph to today is the idea of taking a community that would normally be small and expanding it out. Right, basically as our technology gets better, we're able to further expand the boundaries of our community. Right, so when we think about the telegraph, May 24th, 1844, you're able to tap out dots and dashes along an electric line, and that's able to send information across long distances. Right, and do it nearly instantaneously, not quite instantaneously, but very close. And so this is good, right? Like this is something that is kind of taking the ability of a community that would be, historically just limited to a small geographic area, and expands out the information that can be sent from that community to connect to another area. Right? So, we're going past the idea of we're doing things small here in town to I'm able to communicate almost instantly with the next town over, with two towns over. Right, which, as opposed to, somebody getting on a horse and, taking a couple days journey to try to get to the next town. Way big deal, right? I mean, we can see that as kind of the first form of digital communication. And then we can expand that into the ideas of ARPANET and the modern internet, and just how the progression of communities went from, this small, centralized geographic location to a little bit bigger when you can send messages across the telegraph, to some slightly larger spheres of influence when we're dealing with ARPANET and starting to connect computers, to now basically globally, right? When we see the modern internet and how we're able to connect communities on the modern internet, it's global, it's instantaneous. We've taken that idea of community and taken it from something that is a very small, centralized location to basically the entire world. Which is, it has some, we can see the significance in that, right? And as a result, we're able to communicate and, if you're a business, sell. If you're not a business, maybe you just want to get some ideas out there. Influence, as it were. And connect with people around the world. When we look at the first social sites, it kind of varies in terms of what age of the internet we were in. In the early internet, mid-90s, we saw the rise of news groups, which we're talking about things like Usenet here. If you're a little bit older, you're probably familiar with news groups and Usenet from those early mid-90s days. Not necessarily a very friendly, in terms of user-friendly form of social media. I mean, it's actually, if we look at the nature of what we would consider friendly, I think it's actually probably kind of flip-flopped, right? Because I think a lot of those earlier news groups in general, while you might have to have a little more technical knowledge to be able to use them, the people on them were a lot nicer. Nowadays, we have kind of flipped that where, it's really easy to use social media and connect with people, but as a result, you get some not-so-nice people that are also using the platforms. It's just something kind of interesting to think about there. But, it's just able to connect people who share a similar interest. Right, and that's something that I think about a lot when I think about the idea of social media. Several years ago, we did a big part of this particular course on Tumblr because it was a big platform at the time. And if you're at all familiar with Tumblr, you know that it can be kind of a strange place. But it was kind of amazing to me how very niche interests, you might be the only one that you know of in your particular town that has a particular niche interest. But if you take that and you get that on the internet somehow, you can find hundreds, thousands, maybe even more like-minded individuals who share that niche interest with you. And I think there's a lot of significance in that, right? I think knowing that maybe you're not the only person that feels a certain way, or you're not the only person that likes a certain thing, right? It seems like a good thing to some degree, right? As long as it's kind of useful, I guess, as it were. We saw the first dedicated social site in 1997. It was a site called 6 Degrees. Like, kind of based off the idea that, 6 degrees of separation, right? Like, every person is 6 degrees of separation from every other person, right? You know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows that other person. Which also led to, like, I guess it would be an early internet meme, the idea of the 6 degrees of Kevin Bacon, right? That everybody was 6 degrees away from knowing Kevin Bacon. You know somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows somebody who knows Kevin Bacon. right? Whether or not that's an actual, real, true thing. And it very well could potentially be dangerous. That is a good point there. It could potentially be dangerous. Yes, we do want to enter in with good intentions on our end, and there definitely is a lot of dangers out there. So as we're talking about community, we do want to engage in community ethically and legally. Right, because it very well could be very dangerous. And that is a good point to bring up. Yes, thank you. The first major social site was Friendster that came around in 2001. LiveJournal allowed for easily available blogging platforms. That was first built in 1999, and then it really got big when it was purchased by Google in 2003. And then we moved into the Web 2.0 era, where everything was interconnected to social media sites. And I think that's where things really start to go downhill, is when we get this idea of Web 2.0 and all the sites being kind of interconnected to social media. That's where we get things like Facebook trackers on websites that we go to, and we can log into other websites with Google accounts or Facebook accounts, and it's like what information's being shared there, right? Like there's a lot of stuff here that it's kind of interconnected, and some of it's good and some of it is not so good, right? And again, it all kind of goes back to how we decide to ethically use something. That's a big conversation we'll have a little bit later in the semester. Right, it's one of those things where, let me try to think of a good way to put it here. You have to work within a system. In 2023, if you're doing any kind of business that you want to be, majorly successful, or, you're trying to interact and you're trying to engage and gain some traction for a business, an organization, an idea, the way that we do that is via social media. And it is true that not everything through social media is wholesome and good, right? There's a lot of really negative, really bad parts about it. But we kind of have to live and work within a system that will allow us to reach people and get our message out. And, if we are doing social media management for a business, make our, business a little bit of money. All of these things really. So as we are kind of living and working within a system, our goal then becomes to kind of be the ethical, moral people that we want to engage with. And I think that is something that we'll talk about as we get to the idea of community, is that, if we foster a community that shares our ethics, then we're doing better than if we were to foster a community where we didn't really care about that so much. And I think that's a lot of what we saw out of Web 2.0 that kind of gave rise to some of the more negative parts of social media, because of the fact that it was also when social media got really monetized. And so I think you can kind of see the line of financial gain that could be made in social media and the line of shady business and negative things in social media kind of following a similar trajectory. Just because greed, basically. But that's another discussion for another day. When we're talking about Web 2.0, we're basically just talking about all sorts of websites online getting integrated with social media sites. The ability to share sites on social media directly from the site, right? Like you might have seen buttons on websites that just have a little Facebook icon on them, where you can just click that button on the other website and it'll share it to your Facebook account. All that kind of stuff. That's what encapsulates Web 2.0. Here are some other major social media dates that we can see here. LinkedIn was created in 2002, MySpace in 2003, Facebook in 2004, YouTube in 2005, Reddit also in 2005, Twitter in 2006, Instagram in 2010, and then TikTok, believe it or not, was actually created in 2016. Merged with the US app Musical.ly in 2018 to become one massive app. Right, so TikTok itself, you might be familiar with ByteDance, the Chinese company that is the owner of TikTok. I believe it was that TikTok was the Chinese company and Musical.ly was the US-based company, and when they merged in 2018 and just created a massive global application that was owned by ByteDance, which does have its own controversies that we can talk about later in the semester. Right, but one of the things that we can see here is that some of these platforms are now also, getting up there in age. Right, I mean, we see LinkedIn is over 20 years old at this point. Facebook is almost 20 years old. YouTube is almost 20 years old, 19 and 18 years old, respectively. A lot of these sites that we, think maybe they haven't been around that long, or maybe they're fairly new, they've actually been around a long, long time. Like some people are amazed when I tell them that Amazon was created in the 90s. Right, it didn't become enormous until more recently, but it was created in the 90s. YouTube didn't become enormous until it was purchased by Google a few years after it was created. I think roughly 2008. Twitch came off of a site called Justin.tv. Justin.tv parlayed into Twitch. Twitch was even still relatively small until it got purchased by Amazon. Right, so lots of things going on. With social media sites. We can look at just a little bit of data. And this data is a couple years old now. The numbers might be just slightly different, but the last time I checked, they weren't very different than what they are today. It's roughly the same. And this is kind of what I mean by the idea that we have to kind of live and work within a system. Right? Because if 72% of U.S. adult population is using social media, and we want to reach this population, or parts of this population, we kind of have to go to where they are, right? So we have to live and work within a system to be able to get to these people and reach them and talk to them and try to get them to buy our product or whatever it is that we want to do. 73% of U.S. adults regularly visit YouTube, right, which is pretty significant. It's another reason why, I like to use YouTube for this type of project, just because it is a widely used platform. 73% of U.S. adults regularly visit YouTube. When surveyed, 80% of people said that when they go to learn something new, the first place they go is YouTube. 69% of U.S. adults are on Facebook. 75% of U.S. adults 18 to 24 use Instagram. In a couple weeks, when we start talking about who our users are and where our users are, one of the important things that we'll look at is kind of the idea of demographics and things of that nature to kind of help determine where we should be spending our time. 73% of U.S. adults use Snapchat, which we will talk about, a little bit more about a lot of these next week as we kind of look at specifically at the platforms. The benefits of what, maybe Snapchat could bring. We talk about the idea of ephemeral social media, which is really what we see with Snapchat, something that is there and gone, even though it's, it's always on a server somewhere. It's never really gone. But that basically brings us to the end of what I want to talk about today. When we look at what's next, we're seeing currently taking advantage of mobile devices, right? A lot of talk around the metaverse that we'll talk more about later in the semester. We wanted, ideally, there's an increased focus on privacy that we're looking at. And it's because of that first bullet point there, which is highly personalized content. Right, if I'm able to receive highly personalized content based on algorithms that know me, based on my activity online or whatever else it is that they're using to glean information, then there is responsibility with that information that needs to be there, and these companies need to be held accountable for it. So this idea of highly personalized content and increased focus on privacy, they go hand in hand. Because the more data we have online, and again, living and working within a system, we're kind of forced to some degree to put more and more data online. A lot of that is getting spidered, getting gleaned by these big social media companies, and we want to make sure that they're being good stewards with our data and hold them accountable for our privacy if that's something that they're going to be doing. I do also think that there is a personal bit of accountability on privacy. Don't overshare, that sort of thing, right? Using all of the techniques and tricks that we should know by now to, maintaining a good digital footprint and keeping us sort of safe as we are online. And again, that's something that we'll talk about as we will progress. So that's basically all that I have for you for today. If there are any questions from anybody who's here with me live, you can go ahead and start throwing those in the chat now if you don't mind, and we'll get them answered. If you're watching the recording and you have a question, you can email me, you can Teams message me, and just let me know, and I'll do my best to answer that question for you. Give it just a second or two to see if anybody here hanging out with me live has any questions. And a lot of the things that you might have on your mind right now are probably going to be things that we get into a little bit later. Thank you all for coming. Thank you all for coming. I appreciate you taking your time and hanging out with me today. All right. Turn the music on for just a second. I'll hang out just in case somebody might have a last minute question. But again, that's all that I have for you for today. We'll probably try to go back to regular time next week unless everybody likes 1 o'clock. And we might just keep it at 1 o'clock then. But thanks for coming. We'll see you next time.